Welcome back to our panel discussion, The Journey to Delivering Mission in the Cloud, sponsored by Oracle, here on Federal News Radio, part of the Federal News Network. My guests today are David Knox, the Group Vice President and Chief Technology Officer at Oracle Public Sector. Jonathan Fibus is the Deputy Director for the Governance and Enterprise Management Services Division at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Sukhvinder Singh is the Chief Technology Officer at U.S. Agency for International Development. Ghulam Shakir is Systems Architect at the National Archives and Records Administration, and Eddie Tejeda, Director of Cloud.gov at the General Services Administration, and I'm your moderator, Tom Temin. And something David said earlier I want to pull on a little bit more, and that is the idea of which services, such as directory services for email and other, and maybe parts of your SIEM even, should or stay in a data center, stay locally, which can move to the cloud. I understand people have arguments kind of both ways on that, and it's almost a strategic decision. So Sukhvinder, why don't you start?
So what we have done at USAID is kind of a hybrid or middle ground. So we have certainly consolidated a whole bunch of directory services from our missions overseas to US, so they don't have directory services overseas anymore. But at the end of the day, it is still in infrastructure as a cloud, which we manage, but there are services out there, and I think that whole group of services is improving, so there are services you can buy, directory services as a service, so you don't need to really have your own domain controllers and Active Directory, whatnot. I mean, you can just rely on this as a service, which we have not really gone towards at this point, but I'm pretty sure we'll be exploring that in coming time.
So then directories for you were a lift and shift, so to speak, to the cloud.
Yeah, to the cloud. So we consolidated, we shifted, a few pieces around to make it easier, and obviously bake in, the disaster recovery side of the things.
So that your way of working is still traditional. If someone joins the agency and they're registered and all their rights and permissions are entered by someone at USAID,
yes,
only it's happening in the cloud.
Yes. And there's another factor I think that kind of controls, how far you can go, because as long as I think you are dealing with the Microsoft, nothing against Microsoft, but Microsoft or Windows, I'm like, you have more control and better control, and I think ease of control if you stick with Active Directory or domain controllers, If you are just Linux shop, let's just say,
sure,
and all you do is just development, right? You can go with directory as a service. Nobody's stopping you from that.
Jonathan, what's your thinking there?
We're also in a hybrid mode because there are some things that we have that are cloud services that are not replicated to our local data center, and there are some things we want to maintain more control over by keeping it in our local data center. We have the ability to sign people in, to authenticate users, to change permissions on the fly in both environments. And we need to be able to do it quickly, and it replicates fairly quickly between what we have on site and what's in the cloud. So it has yet to be an issue.
So you have kind of a syncing function there.
That's correct.
Works out. Got it. Okay. David, what do you see across government as people do that?
Well, you'll probably not find many more opinionated people than the security folks inside the organization. And they really have gone through a lot of effort to figure out what's the best way to secure everything. And if they cannot replicate that exactly in the cloud environment for whatever reason, they're going to keep what they have. The other thing is, as we see, not every workload in the cloud, the on-premise capability to do your authentication, to do your security, it's better because you have a lower latency. So I think a lot of it depends on how many systems you're running in the cloud and how many are you running on-premise.
Got it. So there's really no single answer there.
Correct.
Okay. Eddie, what do you find?
Well, I think one of the key things that we have found is that, at least for the projects that we have worked on and the applications that have been developed, compute and storage is the most important part of the application. The question is, how do you tack on additional services and how do they communicate back into the primary application? And I think, again, this is where having consistent structures, predictable models, microservices that know how to speak to each other is really important. One of the things that we have that GSA is also working on, and you all might know about this, is login.gov, and that's something that, for example, handles authentication and for many projects. And thinking about how that connects to cloud.gov, I think is something that has been done, and we want to continue to think about integrating these services even further.
Got it. Okay. And then I wanted to go into the topic that also came up earlier that we didn't really explore fully, and that is the next wave of computing having to do with artificial intelligence and machine learning. And this would strike me as something ideally suited to the cloud because it's basically a development thing, and you need training data sets and you need testing data sets, two different types of data sets, and then it seems like an ideal thing to happen fully in the cloud. Gulab?
Yeah, so the reason why artificial intelligence and machine learning is suited to the cloud is the fact that the technology around that makes the machine learning possible, the GPUs, is moving at a very rapid pace. So it doesn't make sense to do to develop something on your own on your data center because it's going to be obsolete in probably in a few years. So the cloud is a natural because you're able to leverage the latest GPUs that are coming out. And as you mentioned, your data is already there. So it's a matter of basically doing some feature engineering and trying to extract your learning set, your validation set and testing set. And then it shouldn't be too hard to just to do some kind of a pilot on an particular using an AI/ML technology there.
I guess maybe a related piece would be data visualization, which is graphics intensive and a lot of other compute intensive parts to that. Eddie, does that seem like a cloud? Is that what people are doing in places like cloud.gov?
Yeah, there are a lot of projects that have launched that make heavy use of visualizations. I think another factor here is that what we're seeing at GSA is that there are a range of different services that have emerged that are beginning to mature that allow people to very quickly connect these different services, these different tools together, like the web design system, for example, which provides consistency in user experience across different sites and applications. And I think that where I see cloud.gov and the way that it fits into the broader ecosystem is that there are a lot of different tools and services that you can use, some of the guidelines, some of the recommendations that GSA has, but you're not necessarily locked into that. You also are open to connect to a range of different services from a range of different providers as well. I think that type of flexibility and that kind of modularity between when you develop applications is really, really important.
Yeah, Sukhvinder, he said something that I think is key to cloud selection, and that is not all every cloud is different. They all have totally different sets of services and styles, if you will. And so how do you go about choosing a cloud? I mean, is that the deciding factor? Is the services offered?
It is
assuming
actually,
they're not going to charge you to
I think
death.
one key factor from the connectivity point of view that we look at, who are the cloud vendors can give us direct connectivity from our co-location. So we don't need to traverse through the internet. So we can directly tap into Google's of the world, or Microsoft or AWS, from our co-location. So that certainly is one. Another
is that like a value-added network
It
connection?
is actually, yes. So it's called direct connect in some,
That's
vendors.
an old-fashioned word, but
so direct connect
right.
or backhaul, they call it, right? So they just connect you right there. So all the pipes are coming there. You just need to find the right pipe and just connect it, right? So that certainly is a big factor. Not from latency. It also is from the I think the performance point of view. We also look at it. Second is the data. Putting data in the cloud is easy. There is no charge for it, but when you take it out, there is a charge. I think that's another thing we need to look at, which is not usually the case with the SaaS providers, but there are others. There may be data charge because when you use the storage. Yes, they will really welcome, okay, bring whatever data you want to bring, but when it's time to take it out, then they start charging.
Kind of like the Roach Motel. Yeah.
Exactly. I just want to touch a little bit on the AI, and machine learning in the cloud. I think without cloud, it would in my view, it would have not been possible, at this scale and with the speed. The cost point, I don't think, anybody can beat, if you want to try AI in our data center, right? And time to market and the whole ecosystem. I'm like, we can try anything, if really you want to AI or machine learning point of view in any of these bigger cloud vendors, any given point. All you need to know where your data is or how you train the model, right? You don't need to worry about I need to buy machines, I need to install software on it, I need to find, I'm like, yeah, you need just the right people who understand your data and they know how to make use of these components. I think that's amazing.
Sure. Jonathan, what are your differentiators and product selection criteria?
So again, it's what am I paying for that workload? What am I paying for the processing power? What am I paying for the software or the data upload and download charges? Because it's a wonderful thing to take a paper record, scan it in, and have the machine decide what fields are important and how to store them in our database. So it can look at several dozen pieces of paper and figure out how to process tens of thousands of pages of data. So we let the computer do what it does best. We figure out the time of day that makes the most sense to do it, depending on our cloud vendors' time-sharing charges. And we let the machine learn and process, and we check on it instead of having to look at each page individually.
Sure. So if DISA is doing it at 2 a.m., you'll take 3 a.m.
That's
Something
right.
like that, sure. David, what do customers ask about? What do you commonly encounter as what they worry about and what they are concerned with when competing and going for cloud selections?
Well, yeah, obviously it's cost and flexibility in there. Bare metal options now are becoming increasingly more popular. It gives them a level of isolation that enhances the security. And they're looking for predictable costs and predictable performance. We're back to the sort of service level agreements. And those, at the end of the day, if something happens in that cloud and you can't get it to work because somebody else is being a noisy neighbor all of a sudden, then you say, I would rather get something dedicated. I would like to make a comment. Jonathan, I think, hit it very correctly when he was talking about AI. I think it's the application of AI and ML, not us, pretending we're experimenting with something new, but take chatbots as a perfect example of an application that we just absolutely want that to be run by itself. We don't want people behind there. We want it to be getting smarter all the time. You look at your human capital management systems, have it recommend the best candidate for you. You look at your supply chain systems where it can recommend the best vendor with the best discount. And it's those very practical applications of AI and ML, I think, that are really going to push it to where it's just pervasive. And it just becomes, we'll probably not even be talking about it. It'll be like air conditioning. It happens everywhere. And that's, you just looking for the output.
Got it. And that brings to mind the idea of latency, too, as you deploy applications. And there are a series of content delivery networks that date back quite a number of years to make sure that data delivery is localized. Is that a cloud feature in the major cloud providers?
Absolutely, absolutely. That is paramount. When I don't think we ever have a conversation when we're not talking about that and ensuring it's encrypted and that you can't turn it off, right? There's no way to bypass it. Configuration control is something that is, it's one of those things that we haven't really gotten good at being able to do it. So what you're really looking for, you're looking for a cloud provider that'll help you set up a system that's configured properly. And you tell them, I need a disaster recovery, I need high availability, I need scalability. Now, you tell me how to do this so that I don't mess it up.
Sure, and Sukhvinder, you've got the worldwide, USAID by definition is not something where the activity happens here.
That's correct.
Except the budget requesting and so forth. But beyond that, the activities are all over the world. And how do you deal with distribution issues, not just latency, but everything else?
Yeah, latency is, as I mentioned before, it's really the key factor, all what we do from the architecture point of view. So the right interconnects or direct connects to the cloud providers in our data center or co-location is the key. I think the second piece that's going to really help us, hopefully, is the STIC 3.0, which is coming out. So I think
Trusted Internet Connection.
Trusted Internet
right?
Connection version 3, which is really going to open, the space, not that everything needs to be backhauled to US. That's really what kills, So if I have a perfectly tuned application just flies, in US, it's probably going to suck in Congo, let's just say, right, because of the infrastructure. So that's really going to help because the use cases that we have read, at a high level, and I think we are very excited to be part of that pilot with DHS. So hopefully we'll find some localized tech approaches, architectures, so we don't need to backhaul every piece of information to US, and that certainly is going to help with the, the edge computing, a lot of other stuff. Yeah.
All right, well, we could probably pull on each one of those for the next hour, but unfortunately we do need to close on that note. So I want to thank today's guests. They are David Knox, the Group Vice President and Chief Technology Officer at Oracle Public Sector. Jonathan Fibus is the Deputy Director for the Governance and Enterprise Management Services Division at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Sukhvinder Singh is the Chief Technology Officer at U.S. Agency for International Development. Ghulam Shakir is Systems Architect at the National Archives and Records Administration. And Eddie Tejeda, Director of Cloud.gov at the General Services Administration. I'm your moderator, Tom Temin. You've been listening to Federal News Radio, part of the Federal News Network. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search Oracle.